Before we get started, we all know that this is Hispanic Heritage Month, so let's acknowledge all our Hispanic colleagues in the audience. But the reason we are here today is to talk about mentoring, a very important subject, especially as we try to recruit young people into nursing, especially Hispanic nurses. The reason being, when I looked at the statistics, there are only 3.6% of nurses who are Hispanic, while this population is over 17%. So it is very important, and it's great that we have Dr. Crespo Fierro here to talk about mentoring with us today. So just a little bit about Dr. Crespo Fierro. She's a fellow of the New York Academy of Medicine, is a clinical associate professor and the director of the lead honors program at NYU Myers College of Nursing. She graduated from NYU Myers traditional baccalaureate program and received a Master of Science in Community Health Nursing and a Master of Public Health in Community Health Education with a subspecialty in HIV/AIDS nursing from the Hunter Bellevue School of Nursing at Hunter College, City University of New York. She completed a doctorate at the Graduate Center, City University of New York. Her dissertation explored the culture care needs of Puerto Rican women receiving HIV care from nurse practitioners in New York City with the intention of bridging culturally congruent care and patient engagement practices. At NYU Myers, she's faculty advisors for the Latino student groups and serves on the steering committee for the Inclusion, Diversity, Belonging, and Equity group. She teaches health classes for New York City independent schools. Her area of interests are HIV care, the social determinants of health, culturally congruent care, and linguistically appropriate services, LGBTQ and adolescent health needs, nursing workforce diversity, diverse student support, addressing the STEM pipeline issues for students of color, and anti-racism health professional education. She's an alum of the LNN Leadership Institute and is a fellow of the AACN Diversity Leadership Institute. She serves as the executive board of the Catskill-Hudson Area Health Education Center, the Board of Nursing Education Funds, and the Greater New York chapter of the Association of Nurses in AIDS Care, and as the president of the New York chapter of the National Association of Hispanic Nurses. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Michelle Crespo Fierro.
So as you all know, this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're rounding out the end of this month. I hope you've had an opportunity to celebrate. I won't go too much into the history, but it's been around about 30, 40 years in some versions, and really honors the liberation of Latin American countries, and looks to respect the Hispanic heritage. But that said, let's all be perfectly clear. Large parts of the US are always Hispanic, have always been Hispanic, have been part of Latin American countries. So just became part of the US with some battles against in the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, but a very large part of the US is Hispanic. So it is part of our heritage. I wanted to identify this individual in the middle. This is Sylvia Mendez. Is anybody familiar with who she is? Okay, so one, she's on this board because she is a nurse. But it's her journey, her educational journey, that makes her stand out. Back in the 40s, when her parents moved to a new area in Orange County, California, they wanted to enroll her and her brothers into the school across the street. So her aunt, who is fairer skinned, took the cousins and her and her siblings and went to enroll them. Automatically said yes, the cousins could enroll. Her and her brothers would have to go to another school. The assumption being that because they were darker skinned, they did not speak any English and therefore needed to go to a segregated school for the Mexican children. So a little bit more about her story. Her dad is Mexican, her mother is Puerto Rican. And her mother approached the father and said, this cannot stand. We need to do something about this. They sued the school district in the case Mendez versus Westminster. And back in that time, 1948, they won their case, and the school system there was desegregated, and they were able to go to that school. Going to that school set her up to be able to go directly into an ADN program when she was ready, and then continue on for a bachelor's and a master's. That case, Mendez versus Westminster, was used by Thurgood Marshall as an exemplar and as a test case to prepare for Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. So everybody knows Brown versus Board of Education? Yes? Anybody not sure? Okay, so we know what then happened. The Supreme Court then said that desegregation of education was unconstitutional. In 2011, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama. And she continues to be an advocate. She's in her mid-90s, and we still have her, thank goodness. All right, this is not working at all. All right. Okay, a little bit of background about the Latino population. So with the latest census data that has come out, we now know that 62+ million of our population identifies as Hispanic and Latino. And that is 18.7%, a 23% increase. But we know this is an undercount. Why is this an undercount? Two reasons. Undocumented individual or people with questionable documentation not wanting to fill that out. And that's the case every 10 years. What made 2020 different? Did someone say the word, the name? So we don't have to say the name, but what was the issue? Beyond all the other issues, what was the issue, the particular issue? Say that again? So not necessarily, but for the census. Why would people not want to fill out the census? That was different in 2020. That wasn't the same in 2010. No. No. It was the citizenship question that was going to be added to, and that was put forth very early in his administration. And even though it wasn't allowed, Supreme Court said they couldn't do it, the word had gotten out and people were worried. So even though many organizations were putting forth a campaign to counteract that fake news, it didn't matter. It was already out there. So what was the other issue in 2020 that complicated everybody completing the census? COVID, right? So people relocated, people passed on. I mean, there was a lot going on. So this is definitely an undercount. And again, there's always been an undercount, but 2020 was a particular situation. So what's the problem if we have an undercount? Potentially lack of representation, lack of visibility, and lack of funding. Yes, if people don't know that we're there, they don't know what our needs are, the money is not going to be made available, right? Because someone's going to say, show me the documentation, right? And if it's not there, then they're not going to make that money available. So more than 40% of the US population is now identifying as non-white. And then the other thing that's really nice or is becoming better, it's still not 100% where it needs to be, they are creating more nuances in how they're asking the race and ethnicity question. Okay? So Hispanics are what race? Okay, someone said white. What race are Hispanics? What race are we? Someone said it. All races? That's it. We are all races. We are white, we are African, we are Asian, we are indigenous, we are all of them. We're combinations of all of them, right? So there's always the separation of the race question and the ethnicity question. So it is getting better that you can identify, you can break down a little bit more, but it's not perfect. So for my children, so I identify as multiracial, and my children, my husband is Italian, Italian-American. For my children, they were able to identify their white heritage, but they couldn't identify the portion that they got from me. According to the census, it all comes from their father. I don't know. I'm not happy, but it's getting better. It's getting better. Because what happens? If you're forced to check only one box, and that box doesn't feel right for you, are you going to check that box? No. You're going to check other, you're going to check none of the above, and then the nuances of who we are going to be missed, right? So getting better, but not there yet. And then the other statistic that we're now seeing is that the majority of Hispanics and Latinos are US born. So what about the experiences of Hispanics within the healthcare system? And this I'm gonna have to stay over here because it's too many stats here. So less likely to have health insurance, that really hasn't changed too much. Some of that having to do with the types of jobs that people have. 70% have seen a provider in the past year. That number is 82% when we're looking at people older than 65. 46% are reporting communication challenges. So for those of you on the units, is that an experience that you can agree with, that people who are Hispanic may have communication challenges? Yes, right? And not the only population having communication challenges, right? But definitely one of them. 30% worry about their legal status when they seek care. 30%. What is that 30% doing? They're not going to seek care until it's absolutely necessary. And we know that means they're going to be seen in the ED. It means that they're going to be worse off and utilize more services. And this is whether or not they have insurance, right? Because there are undocumented individuals that have insurance. You all know that, right? Okay, good. I want to make sure. 75% report that their quality of care is good to excellent. 52% report a negative experience in the past. And that negative experience can be from anyone in the healthcare system. So it could be the person that didn't hold the door open for them to the provider that ignored them. All of that is a healthcare experience. So this is important information, not just for direct care providers, but for everybody in the healthcare system. 33% felt that they needed to speak up about their care. That takes a lot, particularly if they feel that they have communication issues, to then muster up the courage and the strength sometimes to complain. That's a lot. 35% would prefer a Spanish-speaking or Hispanic provider. So why would that be the case? Why would that be a preference? I'm sorry? Okay, so because the person who they're talking to, there's two reasons for that. Okay, so they understand I'm gonna say that maybe they're cultural competent, because we can't say that everybody is. Even if you're from the same culture, you may not be culturally competent, but you have a better understanding of the culture, absolutely. And what else? Culture and the language, right? There are a lot of Hispanics that do not learn to speak Spanish. That's not their first language, right? They may be heritage speakers, where they maybe have heard the language but speak slowly or speak in a broken manner. So for those of you who are here who are Hispanic, was English your first language? Okay. The rest of you, Spanish was your first language? Or the same? Equally? Because some people will get equally. They'll get one parent speaking English, one parent speaking Spanish. So there's all sorts of, there's a spectrum of fluency, right? But that understanding of the culture goes a long, long way. They will also say that they are better at providing quality care, and it's because of those two factors that you mentioned about the language and the culture. Hispanics are also concerned about research and research misconduct. So most of you are familiar with the United States Public Health Service syphilis study at Tuskegee University, yes? Right, okay, so that's usually the one. So, but there are also cases where there were issues with the Latino population. How many of you are familiar with birth control testing in the late 50s, early 60s in Puerto Rico? Okay, some of you are, okay. How many of you are familiar with La Operación? The operation, the procedure. It's, for those of you who are not familiar with that colloquialism, it's actually tubal ligations in women. And the ways in which they were coerced into choosing that, or kind of not choosing that, right? Or being given false information such as it's reversible. This is what many women were told. And were not given other options for birth control. And it's finally starting to slow down, but it's almost become an option because so many have done it in the past. So it's like, oh, okay, this is what I do. I don't want to have kids anymore, okay. And that's this legacy of this coercion and this medical misconduct. So Hispanics are less likely to see other Hispanics in the sciences, but believe that representation can advance that role, right? So for those of us who are Hispanic, or whatever our culture is, our race and ethnicity, our visibility is very important for our communities. Because someone sees you and says, I can do it. Someone hears your story. The bumps in the road, the detours, whatever it was that got you to where you are, someone hears that and says, oh, they did it, I can do it. And that's what's going to open the doors for more people to come into, to continue the diversification of our profession. And here's the thing, so a little bit more recent, but 4.1 million active RNs in the US. And this is from the 2020 National Nursing Workforce Survey. Of that, 5.6% report being Hispanic or Latino. And if you look at the report, that statement is about this big in a 75-page document. Other than that, there's no other mention except for the LPN section. LPNs are 10% of the, I think it was like 300, 400,000 LPNs in the country. 10% are LPNs. Other than that, there is no other statistical analysis. They did not break out anything else regarding, their entry to practice degree, the current degree that they hold, where they're working, how much money they're making. All of that is not accessible
It may be available for them to be able to put together in a report, but it didn't happen. And that's a problem. Because if we don't know, there's nothing that we can do about it. 5.6%, this is ridiculous. 18.7% is our population. There needs to be better representation. This is the worst representation out of all the races and ethnicities. Whites and Asians are overrepresented in the nursing profession. African Americans, Blacks are just there. It's not a perfect match, but they're right there. There's the numbers are very, very small for indigenous populations and Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders. But again, those numbers are closer to each other than what we have here for Hispanic and Latinos. So there are benefits to having a diverse nursing workforce, and this is what we need to address. Again, we talked about nurses who understand the culture, having that, the lived experience. They understand what it is that the community goes through, and they speak the language. That said, I do want to point out there is a phrase called colorism. Have people heard of that phrase before, colorism? So we really shouldn't make the assumption that just because someone is of a similar culture or background, that they're going to have an immediate connection, that there isn't any, backstory of racism in their culture or classism in their culture that may come out in the encounter, okay? It may be they're from the same country, but there's been, there's been civil war, civil unrest, and they're on opposite sides. So that can come out. So it's not an automatic assumption, but definitely gets us closer. These characteristics help people to build trust, so that the care providers can build trust in the relationships with the patients faster, because we're getting through some of the mutual understandings, okay? It doesn't mean that if you're of a different culture that you cannot build trust. Absolutely, you can build trust. You should be working to build trust with every single patient that you have. But if you're from that same culture, you speak the language, it makes it it makes that process faster. And with that, we're gonna have improved assessments. Why? Because we're gonna get more information from our patients. They're going to trust us to talk about what's really going on with them and provide more of those details. When we're doing teaching, we're going to be able to get into things in a better detail. So if you're from the culture, so for example, if you're Latino, you understand how important rice is to the diet. And you're not gonna walk into someone's room and say, well, you're not eating rice anymore. You're not gonna say that, because you know that it's not gonna happen. But yet you can kind of work around that, right? You can have a discussion about that. Get into the details about, maybe what can be swapped out, portion control, all of that stuff. But you do that when you understand how important rice is to the diet, or certain foods are. Particularly if it's a holiday or a special occasion, right? You're not gonna tell someone, okay, yes, you're going to your grandchild's, your quinceañera, and yeah, you're not eating tres leches cake. No, you're not telling them that, because yes, they're gonna have that tres leches cake because it's from the bakery and blah, 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 and there's a whole story behind it. And if they're not eating it, it's gonna be a whole problem, right? So, but being from the culture, you already understand that. It is absolutely accessible knowledge for anybody else, but it just makes it a little bit easier to move through that process. It's also important because having a diverse workforce improves the practice of all the members of the healthcare team. You're bringing diverse perspectives,
You are teaching your colleagues. So all of that is really important, and it benefits, again, the work that the nurses and the interprofessional practice is accommodating, but also the care that is delivered, right? And if the care is better, people are going to come back. People are going to be satisfied with the care that they received, and they're more likely to follow through on plans of care and let you know when there's a problem with that plan of care, right? There's not going to be the respectful nodding that we often see because the person is acknowledging your expertise, your knowledge, your education, and nodding their heads whenever you speak to them. You want that nod of the head to be one of true agreement because you've worked together and developed a culturally congruent care plan that is also another phrase for it would be patient-centered care. Okay?
And by the way, if anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to interrupt me. Don't let me go on and on and on if you'd rather I not go on and you'd want to focus on something more specific. Some other things that are really important is that for what are the things that we need to do to achieve that diversity workforce? Because we've been talking about it for a long while. So just talking about it is not going to be enough to get things moving, right? There has to be more that's done. So I usually talk about, we have to talk about the education system. And more specifically, people will say, oh yeah, you got to start working on them when they're in high school. High school is too late in a lot of school systems, particularly here in New York City. It is too late. You're kind of already been tracked in a certain direction. I feel that we need to start in kindergarten because that's when we get them interested in the sciences. This is when we get them interested in being a caring person. And that will help them to kind of get on the right track, take the right courses earlier on. So that way, someone's saying to them, no, you know what, the math class you took was not the right level for you to get into, nursing school, medical school, wherever it is that you're going. We don't want that to be said of any of our children. So we got to start early, kindergarten. We need to educate guidance counselors. Guidance counselors are gatekeepers. How many have been discouraged from the path that you took to get here by a guidance counselor? Right? I'm seeing a lot of, and even younger hands up too. So it's still going on, right? So you may have heard, oh, no, you really should go this way. Oh, you really want to be in the healthcare field? Oh, why don't you look at LPN school, right? Or why don't you get a job as a nursing assistant and see if you like it, right? And you kind of get tracked in this way. And another way, you can get distracted because they're like, oh, your grades are so good. Medical school, that's where you should go. But when you really want nursing, right? So we need to educate those guidance counselors, get them with the program. Role modeling. So all of you are role models. You are all role models. So you need to tell your story. You need to share with others what it is that you're doing so that you can inspire others to follow your path. But we are all role models, and we all create the visibility. So we need to make sure that we're visible. We need to make sure that we need to get into people's faces. We need the supportive academic programming, and we also need supportive advising. We don't have traditional students everywhere. So people come with different paths to wherever it is that they are, and they may need some assistance. They may need some guidance. They may not be familiar with the resources that are available and that they can ask for them. So many people, someone is not doing well and we find out that they have so much going on in their lives that of
course they don't have time to study for the, the health assessment and promotion class, the patho class, because they're taking care of family who are ill, they're taking care of children. But there are resources in many, many schools. So, and they don't know that they can ask for them, that they're entitled to receive them. So sometimes when we're in an advising position, and this is for the faculty here, sometimes we need to kind of get in their face and say, tell me who you are, tell me what you need, and we can work on getting that for you so that you can stay here because you deserve to be here. That's the messaging that has to be given. Yes? Yes? So like tutoring programming, also if there are, peer mentoring is another great opportunity. Just having conversations and relationships with someone who's just a semester ahead kind of gives you, okay, look, this is the lowdown on this class. This is the lowdown on this professor, right? When you're going to clinical, listen, you're not going to get the train at this early in the morning. So this is, you need a different plan to get there on time, right? So all of that is really very important, and that's that academic support. Yep, and then also scholarships. Talk to the office about what scholarships are out there, because those are a huge help. If you don't have to worry about paying for X number of dollars, those are hours that maybe you don't have to work, and those are hours that you can devote to studying, right? So all of that, it's a package. Peer mentoring, tutoring program, and then connecting with professional associations. This is super important because it's an opportunity to see that representation. It's an opportunity for networking. It's an opportunity for mentoring and scholarships and other opportunities. So it's really huge. So how many of you, again, this is for the students, how many of you are members of a professional association? Okay, some of you are, okay. All right, so depending on, so you could do your area of specialty. Actually, let me just advance, because that's another slide. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm just gonna go this and then go back to the mentoring part. You could do a professional affinity. So if you are interested in an affinity association, so that would be National Association of Hispanic Nurses. That would be the Black Nurses Association. That would be the Haitian Nurses Association. That would be the Filipino Nurses Association. There is also the Gay and Lesbian Medical Association, which has a nursing section. So those are your affiliation. Men is also another one as well. And then you have specialty associations. So if there's a specialty area you're interested in, that's another one. How many of you are interested in oncology nursing? Okay, do you know ONS has a student membership for the whopping price of $0? All you have to do is take the time to fill out the form. So other associations do have fees, but there are local chapters that may pay for some of those fees. So there are lots of opportunities that you would look at, and it's a really good investment. So if you're interested in certification, there are memberships. So there's all sorts of opportunities for you to be involved. And then here are these benefits. Education. Conferences usually offer professional development. But if you're certified, you can get that education to maintain the certification. Policy development. How many people are interested in policy? Okay, a couple of hands there. So if you can go to any professional nursing association website, find their policy page, and you will know what that association, what statements they have made and put forward, right? And then it's an opportunity to connect with those individuals. Skill development, mentoring, and then here's nice, discounts. Discounts. Discounts, it's very important. Things are expensive. If there is a discount, you want that discount. But part of the reason we're here today is to really talk about mentoring. And mentoring is super important for diversifying our workforce, helping people to stay in the health professions, because it is a tough, tough job. It was always tough. It has gotten harder. More people are aware about it, but I'm still waiting, and I'm sure other people are waiting to see things start to really be done about it. It's really slow. This is where we need our policy people to get in the legislators' faces about this, because we need some change. But mentoring is super important. So it's a partnership, right? It's a partnership where someone who is more experienced, I want to read this precisely, can provide guidance on skill, career, personal, and educational development. There's an individualized focus. That focus is your focus. The focus is you, the mentee. There is emotional support that can be given. There's an opportunity for reciprocal relationships. So I can say that in the mentoring that I have done, there are things that I have learned. So I'm learning from my mentees. The collaborative work to achieve those mutually defined goals. And then there's also the unspoken or the hidden agenda that we see everywhere. So a mentor can help you out with that and understand that. How many of you already have mentors? Okay, some people have mentors. Okay. So for those of you who do not have mentors, you want to find a mentor. Mentors can hold, you're not having a mentor for the rest of your life, right? So I think that sometimes scares people, that there's going to be one mentor and that's it. That's not how it works. You will have different mentors for different phases of your life. So the mentor that I had when I was in high school is different than the mentor that I had in college, different from the mentor I had when I was working and in my doctoral degree, and then also at different points in my profession. All different people. They do not need to mirror your characteristics. So you may have some things in common, but you don't have to have everything in common. Some of my best mentors were not Latinos, were not Latinas. They were actually white men. And that's just what happened. I can't explain it. It wasn't a situation that I looked for. It was a situation that presented itself. But the lessons that I learned are invaluable, invaluable. From all of my mentors. So you want somebody who perhaps can give you that information you're looking for. So maybe that person holds a position you're interested in or works in an area you're interested in. Maybe that person is your boss or your boss's boss. Maybe that person is in the educational program that you're interested in. All of those are opportunities. And then there are, when you are working with a mentor, you want to be very clear about what is the expectation of this relationship. How long do you see it lasting? And is there perhaps an opportunity for continuing on? Or it may morph into something else. So I will say one of my most pivotal mentors in my career was my boss, also my professor in my master's program. And when I moved away from that, he became a friend. He was, I'll just say his name, Peter Ungvarsky. He was Uncle Peter to my kids, you know. So, and really, and I'm going to try not to cry because he passed away earlier this year, but was pivotal. You know, you have that clarity, and it's like, you know, I am exactly where I am because of him. Everything that I, you know, the career that I have,
what I've been able to provide to my children, the life I've been able to have was because of him. So I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to tell him that before he passed. There is someone there are a couple people in the room who know Peter, and he was definitely a character. And when I finished my PhD, he congratulated me, but then I did say to him, I said, this is all your fault. You did this to me. but it was totally with love. But what you want to do for the mentors, very important. You want to always pay it forward. You always want to look for that opportunity to mentor someone. And sometimes you need to be the person to approach someone who has promise. And that's what Peter did for me. He approached me. And you also want to reach behind as you climb. How many of you have heard this phrase before? Okay, I got a couple of nods here, right? So as you are proceeding in your career, always make sure that you're reaching behind to bring somebody up with you, right? That person can be that companion. That person can also be the person who takes over when you move on. So you've got a succession planning, very important. Mentees come with that plan and take the initiative. Don't be afraid. I made a mistake. I was afraid of speaking to this very important person here, Ildara Murillo Rode, who founded the National Association of Hispanic Nurses over 45 years ago. She approached me when I was graduating from nursing school, because she also went to NYU. Gave me her card. I was dumbstruck, and to this day, I should have called her. And I didn't. And they were important. It was probably really important mentoring that I missed out on. So my motto is always, don't ever make the mistakes I made. Make new mistakes. Don't make my old mistakes. But NON is committed to advancing the health of the Hispanic community in the U.S. and also advancing the careers of Hispanic nurses. Do you need to be Hispanic to be a part of NON? Absolutely not. You just need to have a commitment to this mission. And we have plenty of members who do not check the Hispanic Latino box. So there's leadership, service, and policy development opportunities. A lot of opportunities for health-related resources to support nurses, scholarships and fellowships, recognition of the achievement of Hispanic and Latino nurses. Our current president is Adriana Nava, and I was just saying before that we were talking, when Adriana and I were walking over, Adriana Conde, we were talking about representation and visibility, and one of the things that our current president is doing a lot of, she is getting a lot of time at the White House, which will be very, very important for the health professions. And that's what we have to do. And we also have a yearly conference, which is a lot of fun. We have a great party at the end of it, and celebration. And it's going to be in Portland next year. And then we have the New York chapter of NON, so founded in 1983. Right now, because we're still in the COVID era, sorry, President Biden, seem to disagree on that one. So we're still meeting via Zoom. We're a sub-awardee for the NIH All of Us campaign, where we're assisting with diversifying the populations that participate in research, and which will help us to answer questions in the future. We work with lots of local organizations, mentoring, networking, leadership opportunities, scholarships for students of all levels. Although we do have a specific student membership, which means that you need to be into an entry to practice program to qualify for the discounted membership rate. And then we also, and this is probably one of the most fun things that we do, actually no, maybe the second fun thing. The first fun thing actually is our gala that we have at the end of every year. We have it December 10th coming up. at John Doe on the Water. We're gonna have a good time. And, but we also do conference sponsorship. So if a student's interested in going to a conference, we help them to get there, because going to a conference, no matter where you are in your career, it can be life-changing, because you have an opportunity to meet someone that you read articles that they've written. And I still go total fangirl when I see someone like a nursing legend who I was reading when I was, back in the 80s when I've been a nurse for a long time. And I meet them and I'm just like, oh my, I start to hyperventilate too, because it's just so exciting. But you have opportunities to do that. You have opportunities to find out about job opportunities, other places. So it's just, and the networking opportunities. So if we get students to go early, then they totally can make all of those connections. So those are the things that we are committed to help diversify the profession. Like I said, there are other nursing associations that do very similar things, but I'm just here to talk about NOG, because that's the one that I know best. And with that, I thank you all for your time and your attention, and happy to take any other questions. Thank you. Yes?
I would just like to thank
Oh.
Dr. Bristol for sharing knowledge and expertise with us, so we can use that knowledge to help build a more diverse person and workplace.
Thank you, Dr. Escalier. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. Dr. Haggerty.
So do you think there are any issues in terms of gender within building Hispanic, building outreach into the Hispanic community for mentoring or to bring more Hispanic men?
Yeah, I think with any culture, we deal with some of the gender stereotypes. And yes, nursing is seen as a feminine, a female profession, and a male who wants to be a nurse is automatically seen as being feminine, whether or not they want to be perceived that way. I am seeing differences, and I would say I'm not going to sit here and say that I've mathematically looked at the differences among the different races, but it's very similar, because culturally, nursing can be seen as a lowly profession. So we're breaking through that no matter what the gender is of the individual. But there are a lot of great Hispanic male Latinos out there. They're awesome nurses. As all nurses are. They're awesome nurses. Yes.
I really enjoyed your discussion around mentoring.
Yes.
It's so important. And I was wondering, have you seen in university settings a more structured way of putting together a mentoring program versus I individually would love to mentor, and I'd love to have a mentor.
Yeah.
Or,
So
ways rather than you just sort of self-selecting.
I think having something structured is important, because a lot of people have misconceptions about what mentoring is and what's being asked of them. And I think that sometimes causes people to hesitate. So having a structure, meaning there's educational programming about mentoring for mentors and mentees, mixers where people are able to meet. Now that we're starting to come out of some of the restrictions, being able to bring people together face to face is really nice, much easier than Zoom, but it's all dependent on resources. So in that sense, particularly if there's programming, there may only be enough funding for X number of pairs. In that case, it would be perhaps that you want to encourage some type of formal situation, but also you want to not discourage the informal. You know, so how can you do that? So maybe you've got X number that you can work with your programming, your budget, but you make the educational information available to everybody. So that way, if someone wants to, you know, maybe didn't make the cut for this year, they can still use those resources and be able to try and build that up on their own. And then you also want to have it rolling too. You don't want to, okay, 1 year, we're done. No, because you're not done. It doesn't end. You have to keep on going at it. Yes?
To piggyback off of Dr. Lester's point, I just wanted to highlight, thank you again for your presentation, one.
My
Two,
pleasure.
Professional organizations, like that is, to Brent's point, a great way you know, to have a formal, structurally sound mentoring program. I found one of my mentors through NACI. That was my entrance into the organization.
Yeah.
And we're still going strong today. Actually going to my professional conference later this afternoon.
Oh, there you go.
But if you could, if I could impart anything to the students, make sure you go. There's so many connections in that room. And I've been a member since 2012. I go every year. I'm a leader in chapters now. So
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
support everything that you're putting forth in terms of that.
Yeah.
Mentorship starts there. If you can't find it through your school, if you can't find it in your neighborhood, that professional organization will most likely have a program where they match you
Yes.
with people. So if you don't want to do the work yourself,
Yeah. And if you're at a conference, don't be afraid. Go up to the speaker.
they'll most likely have a track for you.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And you know, different organizations do different types of programming, but it is about, you know, I mean, there's a little bit of a selfish intent to it, right? We need to make sure that there are people to replace us when we need to move on, but it is so enriching. This is a great story. My specialty association, the Association of Nurses in AIDS Care, probably about 10 plus years ago started a mentoring program, and where they actually would identify a student from a diverse background who was interested in HIV care, pay for them to go to the conference, and then get them all connected with mentoring. Our very first individual to receive this scholarship and sponsorship and mentoring is now our president-elect of the national, not, you know, so, and I get goosebumps when I talk about him, because he's just an awesome individual and demonstrated so much promise in the very beginning. And it's like, you know, this is what is possible through mentoring, you know. And you know what, being president doesn't have to be it for everybody. There are so many different roles that can be taken on that can keep you connected, keep you inspired to continue to do your work. You know, I love going to my conferences because it's that opportunity to connect with everybody and just be nourished, re-nourished. So I go, I get the calendar, it's marked off, tell my husband I'm going, tell my boss I'm going, you know, and I'm there, I am there. So, and because it's all of those opportunities. So if anything you take away, professional nursing associations, and it will lead you to those opportunities for mentoring. And
Thoughts on why the number of Hispanic nurses compared to what the population is, why that is so low?
Some of it has to do with the cultural aspect, what I was mentioning before, that it's not a profession that some people are targeted towards. The other thing is that the lower socioeconomic are geared towards being nursing assistants and LPN. So the more entry levels of our profession versus that. There's also gaps in the education as well, and language. Those guidance counselors really do a lot to steer them away from entry to practice education. Like at the baccalaureate level. Yes?
When I think of the term Hispanic, it's very broad, right?
Yes.
A lot of different cultural, political identities that are linked and overlapping. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for non-Spanish speaking nurses to more effectively either be interpreter or with body language communicate with this demographic effectively,
So there are some resources, and I look at them as a starting point. So if you look into a book or any other materials about cross-cultural communication, culturally congruent care, cultural competence, they will have some very broad information. And that's a great place to start, but that's not the end. You have to the only way that you get those nuances is by actually speaking and spending time with people from the different communities. There are huge differences in language. So there are words that can be quite benign from one country, and you're cussing someone out in another country. So like there are kind of words that you learn. Don't ever say these words when you don't know who you're with, right? And it's about spending the time and watching. That's one of the great things about nurses. We're so great about observing our patients and the people that we're with and taking in all of that information. So you build what is called your holding knowledge by spending time with patients, but also other people from the community as well. You don't want to just have that perspective of illness, right? You want the full picture of different cultures. So if you know that you're going to work with a particular community, it's well worth your time and effort to spend time with people from that community. And again, this goes for any culture. We make these assumptions that because someone checks a box, that little phrase that goes after that box explains everything about them, and it's not. It's just a small piece of who they are. There are different identities that are gonna, and there's intersectionality, which we could do a whole nother discussion on intersectionality, but there's just so much richness and so many nuances that, it's not an easy fix, but spending that time, you will learn a lot, and you will be, there will be a lot that you also have an opportunity to teach others as well about nursing and the health professions and the trust that we can build with these communities. But that's a great question.
Are you aware of any sort of good beginner resources for people trying to learn medical Spanish? I mean, there's a lot of people that, I don't know where to start.
Yeah. There's actually a very nice program called Canopy. And if you are, there are some nursing associations, if you're a member, you can get a discount rate to it. What's nice is that it integrates, vocab, grammar, medical terms, and then they would have these really great little scenarios that you could watch. It was like a telenovela. And it was like a telenovela. It was really good stuff, the drama, the good person, the bad person, and they use every single thing that was in the modules leading up to it. Everything was in a 10-minute clip, So that's something that's good. I've actually used it before I went on a trip to Cuba. I wanted to just brush up on my medical Spanish. So, yeah.
My name is Red Webster. I am over the Asian Relations Department, and we have language services through that department. And we do have some resources that you can access independently more, but we do have resources where you could get information on medical interpretation and medical interpretation certification.
That's also, yeah. Hunter College has a program. I think you can do it over like a year and a half. Yeah. Someone needs to tell me. We're probably, I don't know, are we still taking questions, or are we, I don't know. Are we good? Okay, we're good, okay. Because I know people have places to go and things to do. I don't want to keep you much longer.